Charlemagne the God went on The Daily Show to send a message to Democrats. Let's watch.
Hey, listen, man, Democrats have a problem. It's not their policies. It's not their fundraising. It's not that Joe Biden started buffering at the Juneteenth party. No. The problem they have is their messaging. Or to say it plainer, it's how they talk. Nobody wants to hear the normal political voice anymore. I'll give you an example. Republicans made abortion illegal in half the country, which is horrible. It should be a winning issue for Democrats, but here's how Democrats talk about it.
Let me say it again. Pass laws restoring the protection of Roe v. Wade for women in every state. That's what can be done under even under the Dobbs decision.
Every senator must take a stand. If you agree all Americans deserve access to contraception, then vote yes on the Right to Contraception Act.
This Friday, June 7th, will be 49 years since there was a decision made in the Roe versus Wade question.
Bruh, why is this sentence taking you 49 years to say?
He then went on to say Democrats could learn something about authenticity from Republicans.
Before Democrats even worry about explaining their side of an issue, they need to learn something more basic. How to talk like real people. Yeah. And I'm sure that's possible. Yeah. And I'm sure that's possible because you know who's good at it? Those nut-ass Republicans.
The Biden administration sucks.
They're communists, they're Marxists, they're radical left Democrats. They're sick people.
There were riots burning down the country over George Floyd, and I'm really sick and tired of the bullshit annex I have to deal with constantly.
Charlamagne praised Democratic Representative Jasmine Crockett for her relatability and said there was still some hope for Kamala Harris.
All hope is not lost. In fact, just recently, even Vice President Kamala Harris showed a glimpse of her actual personality.
We have to know that sometimes people will open the door for you and leave it open. Sometimes they won't. And then you need to kick that door down.
That's right, Madam Vice President. Kick that door down. That's how you know she's still a cop. She's giving little girls a no-knock warrant, okay? And you know that type of talk is effective because conservatives immediately started clutching their pearls about her lack of decorum.
Yeah, I don't care at all that Kamala Harris used the F word. That was, yes, one of the more direct things she's managed to say during her term as vice president. Jasmine Crockett, though, was the one, didn't she get into that embarrassing screaming match with Marjorie Taylor Greene?
I don't think that was embarrassing at all, but I also know
that was in the House
I know Congresswoman Crockett.
I mean, I don't mean to
personally,
here,
so I thought she hit back on somebody who had been picking on her for quite some time. And yeah, that gets to the whole idea of like, oh, decorum and how we should behave. And I get it, Congress is an august body, but my God, maybe it's a little too august, as you talked about. The oldest Congress we've ever had.
Sure.
Right? And so what Charlemagne's really talking about is talk like human beings across the board. And maybe, yes, I have been known to drop an F-bomb or two in regular conversation. Probably can't do that here. But it does seem to upset a certain generation of people when we have that conversation. So I get it. I get what he's asking for. I get what he wants. We have to redefine this whole idea of what a politician looks and sounds like. And maybe it's back to this idea of a public servant who actually is connected to a community, looks and sounds like their community, and not a robot that's been created by some corporate PAC.
Yes, I think that's a good point. I was listening, I mean, and it's true on the Republican side too. People are, when they're doing invectives against Democrats, they speak directly and off the cuff. But everyone in interviews, I've noticed this, political figures, they're so rehearsed. It's so talking pointsy. I was actually on Fox a couple weeks ago for like the Sunday morning Howie Kurtz's media reaction show. It's great. It's a great show. And Howie did an interview with Doug Burgum, the governor of North Dakota, who is possibly in VP contention for Trump. And I listened to the interview, and it was actually really refreshing because he's had like enough media exposure to know how to sound good on TV, but not so much where like everything he was saying had clearly been rehearsed 10,000 times. It was a little bit more genuine. He sounded like it was imperfect, and it made him sound like a person. And I was thinking, like, this is a worthwhile skill. When you've done TV so much from a political figure standpoint, you just sound exactly as you're saying. You sound like a robot. I find that to be true of a lot of Democrats and Republicans, frankly.
Well, and I know how people often will say things about Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, but people were clutching their pearls when she had a video of herself dancing on a rooftop to the Breakfast Club.
Anybody who was upset
but you see
about
what
that
I mean?
Dumb.
This is part of that.
That no real person was upset about that.
That is part of the mix of how people judge and talk about Congress, when the reality is the more you can be like a real human being and connect with human issues, the better public servant you will be.
Right. Well, I mean, let's not go too far there. They're not real human beings. They're leeches draining the public of their hard-earned dollars to send them to foreign countries or just set them on fire and throw them into pits. I don't want to humanize our political figures too much. They should humanize themselves. They should be worthy of being treated like human beings, because they should do better public policy and guard our money a little bit more zealously.
To be a little bit more serious on this one is that I think there is a danger where the system optimizes for those who can dial for dollars and call somebody on the phone on their worst day of their life and say, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, ma'am. Can I get $200 for you for this next cycle?" That's a really weird thing that we now expect, or this is how people get elected to office, and that's not going to have good policy outcomes. And the system is optimized for the person who can do that.
I think it's funny to compare Republican fundraising appeals and Democratic fundraising appeals. I get a lot of both on my phone, and like the Republican ones, the Trump ones are something like, oh, you know, Trump's having he's going to be at Mar-a-Lago for a fancy party. We didn't see your name on the list. Are you part of the club? Do you support our great, wonderful president or not? That's the Republican ones. The Democrat ones are like, the fascists are at the door, Robby. It's about to all be over. America ended because you did not contribute $20 more to our efforts to stop Hitler 2.0. Thanks. They're so dire in tone compared to the Republican ones are like, it's a fun club, your grandparents are part of it, why don't you want to be a part of it? The Democrat ones are like, it's about to be children of men over here.
Well, you know, I think the fear piece of that goes both ways. The Republican fear ones are like, look around. Be careful who you open the door for. Who's actually being let in here? It's all Biden's fault, right?
Yeah, there's probably some of that too.
So just a little bit of that.
Yeah. Well, so Charlemagne the God has been doing a lot of media tours lately, or at least we've talked about him on the show a lot lately. Maybe it's just been the same amount as ever. But you know, talking about, I think he said he would. He suggested he's voting for Biden, but is not like endorsing Biden, or is pretty cool on Biden right now over Gaza, over some other issues. He was on The View recently, and the hosts were kind of. The Democratic hosts were pushing him to, you know, give a more full-throated endorsement of Biden, to cajole African American people in particular, many of whom are fans of him, to vote for Biden. And he was just like, no, I'm not going to do that. So.
Well, I think there's something different about what you're going to do on Election Day and how much you're going to do on the run-up right now, as people are still trying to navigate what they see as some policy challenges and potentially betrayals from their own party and their own friends. And I think there's still time. And I know as you said, the direness of all of it. It is real. The contrast between Democrats and Republican policies around now, given that the Republican Party is all Trumpy policies, as we saw his unity tour that he's trying to do on the Hill today, there's a pretty big difference between the two. But yeah, Charlamagne has a point that in presentation, some of that gets lost, and there is still time. So I appreciate that someone like Charlamagne, who has direct access to millions of listeners, has a personality, is a fun person, is making the effort to get more informed about politics and try to bring people along with him.
More Rising right after this.